All right, calling the meeting to order of the February 8th, 2018 Isicsb board meeting. Can I get a roll call, please, Ethan? Go ahead. Present. Patrick Updike.
Present on the phone.
Jeff Sunholm.
Present.
Marty Smith. Tom Lampy. John Benson.
Present.
Bob Van Wolfrat.
Present on the phone.
Denise Pavlik.
Present on the phone.
Andy Buffington.
Present on the phone.
Ellen Hagan. Deb Crable. Dave Ness.
On the phone.
Jason Leonard.
Here.
Rob Rotter.
Here.
Mike Casper.
Here.
Carol Lund Smith.
Here.
Larry Smith.
Present on the phone.
Linda Frederickson. Kelly Grosskirth.
Here on the phone.
We got a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Could I have an introduction of the board members, starting here with Jeff?
Jeff Swearingen, Iowa Department of Natural Resources.
Carolyn Smith, Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
John Department.
What were you just saying to me a little bit ago?
Oh, it's been a long week. John Benson, Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, or something like that.
Jason Leonard with the Waverly Police Department.
Mike Casper, Lynn County Sheriff's Office.
Jeff Sundholm, DOT.
Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff.
Thank you. And the members on the phone. Starting with Bob.
FPD.
Kelly Grosskirth, member at large.
Emergency Management.
Okay, I heard Kelly Grosskirth. I heard Larry Smith.
Dave Ness.
Dave Ness.
Patrick
Tom
Updike,
Lampy,
Iowa
DPS.
Department of Corrections.
Okay, Patrick Updike. And is that Tom Lampy on the phone as well?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Denise Pavlik, Scott Emergency Communications Center.
I swear I'm going to get this better here a little bit. Thank you, Denise. Who else was there?
Chris Myers.
All right, Chris, thank you for being on. All right. Andy Buffington. Anybody else on the phone? All right, moving on. Can we have an approval of today's agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Carol. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on today's agenda at all? I will make a friendly reminder, if you guys could take a friendly amendment to that. One of the things that is not placed on the agenda was our meeting minutes from the December 20th phone call that we had for our report to the legislature, if you guys remember that. That was not, it's not listed here, but obviously the minutes were posted as well, but we've never had a chance to approve them. So I would like to actually, if you'd be okay with that.
That is acceptable.
Okay, I appreciate that. So is there any other comments, discussion on the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign? All right. Moving on. The approval of the meeting minutes from December 14th and December 20th, the phone call. Could I get, if you have a chance to look through those at all, and I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Been moved and seconded. for the approval of the minutes from the 14th and the 20th of December. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of passing those minutes signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. All right, moving into some of the other agenda items. When we get to the new business proposals and stuff, I want to make sure that members that are on the phone, please stay on the phone so we can pass those that new business there and maintain that quorum. And we will be taking a roll call vote at those times and stuff for those items. So just be prepared for that. So anyway, moving on. SWIC report. Chris, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Landard. Greetings, everybody from Mesa. We're in the middle of the TIA TR8 meetings. Also, P25 user needs and steering committee meetings are ongoing today. I want to brief everybody that SafeCom survey is still available. I believe that is up until February 23rd. I would encourage, again, people, if you have not filled that out yet, to please do so. It's really our chance to put our mark on kind of the direction of public safety communications going forward. And of course, this will be used when they start making financial decisions regarding grants and other associated things. To restate, I'm here for the TIA TR8 P25 user needs and steering committee meetings. I am bringing up our concerns and needs with P25 LMR technology. Some of the things I've mentioned since I've been here include various aspects of encryption, such as the number of KMF subscriber units can communicate with, key management via inter-KMF communications. A standard for that currently exists right now, but it's not universally implemented amongst the manufacturers. So I'm working to try to bring that to their attention and how it could help large statewide networks like Isicsb and other states with avenues regarding key distribution and things of the like regarding key management. I've also brought up the concern that I have with KMF capacity and also aspects of the CAP program as well. For the CAP program, I'm stressing the need for it to be done well for Phase 2 and other new standards. There's some thoughts that they could maybe speed up a few things, but in doing so, there's a talk of maybe cutting a few corners, and I have advised them against cutting corners. I would like to see things done well so that we know for a fact that once that program is complete, things will work as they are supposed to. I've also passed along some desired features to manufacturers from Iowa. We have a nice representation here from the various P25 manufacturers. Basically, all of them that you know of and a few that you probably have not heard of are here. So those concerns have been voiced to them. Outreach to local counties and stakeholders continues. So I've been able to gather a lot of information in addition to where we were in December. I've also had a chance to recently go to a few local county meetings, Board of Supervisors, some 911 council meetings, and I actually have a meeting scheduled tonight via phone to attend one in Lee County. Looking at doing a few more meetings and presentations in the coming weeks and coming months and, well, most likely coming years as well. So one update that I forgot to mention before, the standards that I mentioned that I voted on in December have been approved for publishing with TIA, and they should get their official P25 stamp of approval today as well. Some updates on encryption for the interoperable talk groups. Our work has appeared in a white paper that was presented by FTIC at the TR8 meetings yesterday regarding the single key and multi-key radio issues we identified and addressed in that meeting. It looks like there's some momentum to possibly updating the standards to address those potential interoperability issues between single and multi-key radios, and that is a good thing. There's more or less unanimous support behind fixing that. At this point, they are basically just trying to figure out who's going to take the lead on it, so that's good. Our timeline for fully vetting the encryption on interoperable talk groups is basically unchanged. We're still kind of thinking 12 to 24 months on getting things lined up and ready to go with that. One of the next things that we'll be looking at is some of the more germane aspects that kind of fall into the realm of standards with regards to basically if you have a key, what do you do if you suspect it's been compromised and what the process and procedure for that could look like going forward. In addition, a technical recommendation could possibly be presented today regarding our findings regarding single and multi-key radios, and I want to thank everybody for their work on that committee and the time they've invested, and I think we're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor. The RIC projects also had their second meeting recently. All RICs have met twice on interstate interoperability and transports. We'll probably have one more meeting where we kind of tie everything together and rope in our neighboring states as SWICs. And we'll kind of start getting things off the ground with that as well, and things should be good to go after that. I also want to mention that the next project for the RICs will start focusing on developing the Iowa Interoperable Field Operations Guide. I expect the spin-up time for that to be over the next 3 to 4 months, and then we'll actively start working on that going forward. That is the report that I have today. I'm going to keep it short in the interest of brevity, since there's a lot of things on the agenda today. And with that, I will yield back to you, Vice Chair Leonard, and take any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Chris? Okay. Hearing none. We've kind of jumped ahead a little bit here and moved Melvin up ahead of the schedule so he can take off. He needs to be someplace. So Melvin, you want to take the floor, please? He calls fast.
I don't see a video cable over here.
I have an adapter for HDMI if you want.
Okay.
Let me go and get it.
Okay. While Melvin's trying to find that, Blake, why don't you jump up here, and we're going to move forward and have Blake DeRouche jump up here and do the 911 council report.
Sounds good. Thank you. The Homeland Security departmental bill for 911 for the proposed changes to merge the wireline with the next gen network, as well as introducing the shared services of call handling equipment as proceeding through the Capitol relatively quickly. The House File 2254 is eligible for floor debate and passing at any point. And Senate File 3107 is slated to be passed out of the Public Safety Committee later today. Both of those are, State Government, dang it, State Government Committee later today. Both of those are identical bills still at this point, with no amendments being placed on either of them. Today at the 911 Council meeting, we passed 5 GIS grants for a total of $75,000 and 3 training courses for a total of $25,000. Those courses, the first is a CTO course from ILEA, Communications Training Officer. There's also three individual GIS training courses that were passed, and as well as Hancock is hosting a Gold Line Success training, and we kind of talked about that. It's kind of a well-rounded, all-encompassing telecommunicator course. So again, 3 training courses approved for funding. Also, we had elections that were slated originally for January with the canceled meeting. We went ahead and held those today. Sally Hall was elected secretary, Rob Dennert vice chair, and Rob Rotter was talked into the chair position. So he'll be doing double duty. Any questions?
No questions, just congratulations to all the new officers there. So he looks pretty excited over there. So okay, so moving back to Melvin.
All right.
Thank you, Blake, for the report.
Let me know when you see it on your screen.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Thank you for moving me up front. I do have quite a few engineers back in the project office. We're trying to figure some things out to try to stay on track and see what else we can accelerate. I don't like to leave them unattended, so I want to make sure that things keep moving over there. All right, so quick status update. This is the current view of where we stand today and highlighting what has changed from last time reported to now. We have all of these sites have changed. So we have 7 sites that have changed status. A little bit more specifically, these 5 sites have changed to active build. What that means is that we had there before sites that we had ordered the towers because the regulatory had recently finished, and we were waiting for resources to come in to start building those sites. Well, the resources are there, and we started that process now, which is actually pretty good. That means, again, we're not waiting for the tower to show up. We're actually starting to build a site while the tower is being built, manufactured. That way, again, when the tower gets rolled in, everything is ready for it, and then we can build that tower as quickly as we can. One of the things to notice here is we have this particular site over here. What's changed over here is that it was in regulatory status, but it's not being approved for rezoning that particular area, which means that if we move it more than 20 feet, we have to restart the regulatory process. We were looking at somewhere else to put it in that county, but we figured since we got to restart the regulatory process again, I'm hitting the eject button and we're going to move out of that county. Instead, we have a site, there's a DOT site over here in this county that we're going to be able to use and make it work for us. So we had a design adjustment, and that means that we're moving into active build for that particular site. We also have these 2 sites up here, which have changed to tower ordered. That means that these were on regulatory status before, and we can order anything or do anything until that regulatory completed for the same reason as always, right? Regulatory effect can cancel the site, which has a domino effect everywhere else. We didn't want to touch that, but now that that's completed, now we're ordering towers, and perhaps next time around when we present, that should turn into an active build. Overall, there's only 2 sites that remain in regulatory. One is in Warren County, and the other one, Hardin. I can't really see that, but but the good thing here is that if you look at the target dates for these should be done in a very near future, particularly Hardin. We do have risks associated with Hardin in the regulatory process. We've identified those. If for whatever reason the regulatory rejects that particular site, we've identified a lease site that we can use to stay on track, and that would be the 6th lease site in the statewide system, which is what we originally proposed when we did the original proposal of the system. Not bad for where we were at the end of last year. I think at the end we were at 5 that were in regulatory, so we're down to 2 right now, which is definitely a nice big change. All right, when it comes to what are the sites that are still sticking out, which we think will be the last sites to be done, those still remain to be the IPTV sites. We have been moving forward with those. We believe we have a good solution in place, and we'll just do all the agreements to get there. And then the Warren County site, which is basically just in regulatory because that was one of the last ones that we were able to get in the queue. But it's moving quickly, and again, by the middle of next month, we expect that to come in, which means that we should be able to get that site completely built in the 2nd quarter next year. The IPTV sites are complicated because these are TOS structures with heavy loads on them, and anything that we do on the site, we have to coordinate because it's going to affect the TV broadcasting for that particular area. So there's safety concerns. There's a lot more detail that has to be given to these particular sites. We have crews that are going on to the sites actually next week where they literally climb the towers, and depending where they are in the tower, we got to turn down the power on the television transmitters. They're going to count bolts and measure the bolts and make sure that it's more than just a paper study. We want to make absolutely sure that the tower is good, and we can't even do that until we had some of the paperwork in order and the coordination in place so that we can actually go ahead and power down some of those sites. And hopefully weather will cooperate. So in summary, we're still building like crazy. The civil site completion is still moving forward. This quarter we have a whole bunch of more sites that we're going to walk through. So that's starting to wind down because now we're going into the optimization piece of this. The microwave dish installations is still continuing. So we have a lot of sites that can go into site shrinking. So the next phase of this is interconnecting all the sites together. So I expect by next time I should be able to show you a map, and so you can see what all the sites that are interconnected together. We have quite a slew of them, and that's part of one of the reasons we have engineers in the office who are been planning on how to do that and the domino effect. In some cases, we have one site that prevents the entire eastern side of the state from being lit up. So we're working on all that process right now to try to make some modifications to design to keep things moving quicker. Again, only 2 sites remain in regulatory, and we expect those. We don't see any problems with Warren County. With the other one, we don't know. we think there's probably about a 75% chance of success, but it's really out of our hands right now. It has to do with some tribal issues, some tribal findings that we need to coordinate with the local tribes and get feedback from them. But the response will work out great. If they present more objections, then we'll have to abandon that site and just jump to the lease site. Again, we have the 5 lease sites on hold. Again, we have all the stuff ready, but I don't want to hit those until everything else is locked. And like the Hardin is an example of that. So if we had to give up, if we went, because our deal is we need to stay at 6 or less lease sites. So if we don't run into a situation, then we want to be able to give up one of the lease sites, and how do we address all that stuff? So we don't want to do that until all the other sites are locked. But the good thing is that we have all the studies in place. We've been working with them. We know how everything is going to go into the site. We just can't hit go until we feel confident that some of the other ones are going to be locked in, which we're pretty close to the end now. Again, the IPTV sites right now are the critical path. Right now, it's looking that just one of the 3 IPTV sites will require tower enhancements, which is good news. But we are doing the physical visual inspection to make absolutely sure that that's still the case. Because not only are we modifying the towers for taking the load that we're putting on due to Isicsb, right? Some of these towers have 2 microwave dishes. Some of them have 4 or 6 microwave dishes, so it gets really heavy. But we also looking, part of the complication with IPTV is that they're going through a rebanding process, which means that their television transmitter antennas have to change. And if they get pushed to the lower band of the spectrum, that means that their antennas get bigger and heavier. So we've had to do a lot of assessments to see where we stand today if we add our load, and what happens in the future if they have to change their antenna to something that's bigger and heavier. So if we have to modify, we want to be able to modify for the bigger and heavier so that IPTV still has their tower assets to modify their antenna structures. So it's complicated. But that's why it's been kind of a slow, and I think those will most likely be the last 3 sites that get built. I think we will probably even do the Warren County site before we're done with the IPTV sites. We helped on the outreach for Region 3, where that demo was done, and that's always good. So far, we restarted that again. We did one in December here. This one, we did this one recently, and then we have others that are scheduled. I think so far the demand and the interest And the questions, I mean, it's just a lot more engaging than things were initially when we started this process. And I think a lot of that is because, again, people are realizing how real this is. And when I show you some of the stuff I have for the next meeting, you'll be able to appreciate how close we are to getting this done. We're so far into this that we're actually starting to look at some of the coverage testing. So we've been working with engineering to grid out the state, and we have some additional options and whatnot we got to work with the state PM to figure out. But we're looking at setting up between 10 and 12 teams to do coverage testing throughout the state, which means we're probably going to be looking at coordinating with local law enforcement as well, just because of the fact that you're going to have strange people driving around. You don't want to do that in unmarked vehicles. So we got to be able to be escorted with law enforcement, which usually means in a law enforcement vehicle that's marked. And if it's somebody local, that's even better. We're looking at, and just to give you an idea of the order of magnitude here, we're looking at gridding out the state at about 100,000 test tiles or test points throughout the state. I'll show you some information on that next time around. Right now, we're in the beginning of this, and we're looking at, what's the timeline and how much resources we need. I think we'll have a better picture, something that's more agreeable to everyone next time around. That's all I had.
All right.
Any questions?
Melvin, this is Tom. I have a question.
Yes.
Would you explain, there's a great deal of requests to light up particular sites and site trunkings because they're anxious to test it, to use it. Could you explain to the board the risks of that? And there are pros to it, but the risks involved and the complexities when we do that and allow the testing of it.
Yes. So when we light up the sites, which is what we're doing right now, we start lighting up the sites. The sites are in site trunking, which means that, let me see if I go back, let me go a couple of maps. So in this example, in this map, you can see all of the lines, all of these lines here are the microwave paths that connect everything together, right? So when we light up a site in site trunking, that means that that site cannot make it to the core yet. And it may not be necessarily the path to its adjacent site, but it may be that the other site isn't ready. So for example, if I had, this site over here, and I can light up all of these sites over here, but none of them can communicate to the core because this path isn't done, or this hasn't finished regulatory, and this is a lease site, this is IPTV, so we can't go this way. So these sites are isolated. So what it means is that while you can have people who are connected to a particular site talk to each other, you cannot have users that talk between the sites because their sites are not interconnected together. So, there's some requests to try it out, which is fine. We can work to do some of that, but this is strictly for getting familiar with trunking and getting familiar with the coverage footprint for that particular site. The thing to keep in mind is that you can have, for example, let's see. So if I look as an example, here's an example where we have a county that doesn't even have a site in it, right? It doesn't have a site in it, but there's still coverage because this site, that site, this site, this site, and this site surround the county to also provide coverage for that county. So the way the system works is that all of these sites will work together in conjunction, connected to the core, so that no matter if you're connected to this site, or that site, you can still talk to each other because everything is interconnected together. But when you have an island, and this site, for example, since we've ordered tower, but this site isn't running yet, we set up this site for site trunking. Well, you're going to get the coverage footprint for that site. And if you're down here trying to test, you're going to get the impression that, oh my God, this system doesn't really give us a coverage. Well, that's because only that site is lit up, right? So it's really a perspective, the user's perspective. Whoever tries playing around with this needs to understand where the sites are, because the sites are not interlinked together yet. We have some of them that are, but not all of them. And that's the reason why site trunking is a fail-soft mode. The whole idea is if all else goes bad, users that are connected to that site can still talk to each other, which is what we always want. We always want the radio user to be able to reach somebody. But it's strictly a fail mode operation, which for if you're doing some kind of an assessment, is not the right way to do an assessment. Any questions?
One more. This might be simple, might be a little bit complicated. So are you still on schedule though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So the regulatory sites as well as the IPTV sites and stuff won't delay what our target date was?
No, what might, again, depends if we run into a really big problem. I think the most complicated one is this one way up here. This is the biggest, heaviest one that requires modification. So what we're gonna do is, again, depending, like right now, most of the sites on this side, Region 6, for example, are done. And so we're trying to get, I think there's Jasper Scales, is this one over here? Once we get this guy connected, that means all these sites can talk to the core, which is over here. That means that pretty much the entire eastern side of the state is going to be lit up, right? So if we run into a situation where we have a site, which right now we don't see that, but if we have a site that for whatever reason we can't get up and running that blocks several sites from getting there, those are the things that we have to deal with.
Sure.
So the way we look at it, the reason why we have looking at 12 teams is that we might just target these emergency management regions. And for example, if we have an issue over here, well, let's not start this yet. We can start coverage testing in this area and then move west.
Sure. Thank you. Any other questions for Melvin? All right. Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move on to the Isicsb UGC. Andy, I know you're feeling under the weather, but are you still on the phone, sir?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
All right, we did not have a January meeting due to we didn't really have any business to take care of. We had Rick reports, some questions. Region 2 right now, the LMR, the movement toward Isicsb migration is moving very quickly in Region 2 with quite a few counties in the western portion of Region 2 moving toward operability. We're also talking as a region about a regional call logger, just to share costs. We've met trying to get the details ironed out with that. There were some questions regarding some of the current capabilities of say things like VLAW 31 and LEA. And what happens, it's been talked about that LEA is going to eventually go away. It's a cost to DPS of $466,000 a year. That's for the 28 sites. That's a little more than $16,500 a year per site to something that fails quite often. So we had discussions about how there would likely be some sort of regional talk group, and that's going to be something that eventually operations and technology would have to decide what's going to take place when LEA does get mothballed in the future. If indeed that happens, that's not a decision that we make. During we obviously had 4 applications that are going to be considered during new business here this afternoon or this morning, hopefully this morning. And we also talked about the formation of metro area interoperable talk groups, things like that. So that's going to be continued in our meeting next week, and we'll also have 4 more applications to consider next week. So that's the end of my report if there's any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Hearing no questions for you, we'll move on to the Finance Committee, Chair Grosskirth.
The Finance Committee met Tuesday. We had Nikki, myself, and then Patrick Updike and Ethan also joined us. And our I'm going to give you our reports. Our balances at this time are for the annual appropriation. We spent so far in 2018 $59,832. Available is $220. I'm sorry, $220,000. I still can't speak. John, you've caught on to me here. $220,600. And the Isicsb grant, this last month, $11,226 was spent. Left in the grant is $185,626. And the Isicsb 2.0 starts on March 1st, just for your information on how that is going to happen. And then Patrick brought to us some air-to-ground channels, which the committee was okay with, but he's going to go back to do some, I think, a little bit more research. He will talk about that one in his report there. And that is it for the Finance Committee report.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. If there's no questions for Kelly. All right, moving on. Chair Benson with the Governance Committee.
All right, governance met this past Monday, and we had 8 standards to consider that came out of the standards working group. You will see 7 of those that were brought forward, so I will be asking the board to consider 10 of those today. We did only a few we made just minor edits to, did not change intent behind of those. The only one we did not move forward was with regard to training of end users. The more we discussed it, there was some language in there that we thought was maybe perhaps problematic. So we will be working with the training committee, Chair Patrick on that as well. I might ask Carol to engage at some point too. But we will be having 10 of those that you will see at the end of the block today. And I think we probably set a world record for longest committee meeting, at least one I've ever run, because I'm all about brevity, and this one actually went over an hour. So, yeah, lots of hard work, but we're glad to bring it forward, and we'll have it at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Any questions for John? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the Operations Committee, which I'm not sure if Deb or Marty, either one of them. I see that, and speaking about the Operations Committee, I see that the letter E in the new business and stuff, the letter to PSAPs regarding Isicsb access, I'm not even sure if that should be there. But anyway, they're not there to address it, so we'll skip it. So moving to the Outreach Committee, Chair Hagan is missing as well. Is her vice?
I think Sean's going to do it.
Sean's going to take care of it? Okay. So Sean Wagner come out and take care of the Outreach Committee and then the FirstNet Outreach Specialist Committee report.
What an entrance.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to just go through my list like usual and just get out of your hair. So first of all, FirstNet's going through a rebranding. So you're going to see some different logos associated with FirstNet. The new logo looks kind of like black lines. So it's kind of a black and white logo. So you're going to see more of that. The upcoming COM Expo or COM exercise, I'll keep you up to date with that, with the newsletter. They're talking about it being a weather-related communications exercise with the National Guard. ABCO NINA conference, I'm working with Mike to make sure that I can sit there and make sure that whenever people come through the vendor lines, I'll be there waving and making sure that they're getting everything that our board has to offer about FirstNet and the Isicsb platform. 911 video, I did turn it out. I believe it was January 1st. It is out there and available. That is dedicated to our friends in the telecommunication 911 dispatchers. We've received very good feedback, and that's your video. Whatever you want to do, however you want to use it, we made that for you guys. So I want to make sure I'm very clear about that. If we had more time, I'd show it, but in the hopes to make sure I get through all my list and you guys can continue, we'll go past. The Isicsb website, we're doing some new code updates. If you don't see your agency out there right now, rest assured, I'm going through and reviewing everything website to current to make sure that everything is up to date. And then we will also start adjusting statuses as we're monitoring people in their process of joining the Isicsb platform. Melvin talked about the RIC 3 outreach. We had almost a standing room. I mean, we were packed. And I want to thank our host, Glenn Sadevi, and the Security Institute. They took great care of us, provided beverages and everything. So I think that was a big success. A lot of questions, a lot of interest. We will start doing additional meetings. We had to push back a little bit, so they won't start again until March, and then they'll probably continue through July. That meeting schedule is still kind of on the flex. I just want to make sure everyone knows, because we want to make sure that when we come out there, we can show everything and demo things so that you can see how it works. And that's also why those locations were chosen, so that both networks could be shown and displayed. I know that question's come up quite frequently. We work with both AT&T, FirstNet, and Motorola to make sure that all of those locations would be turned on at the same time to show the networks. Just so everyone's clear of why that happened the way it did. The newsletter, we sent that out. We're going to be sending that out again. It does include the SafeCom survey. We did have something about grants and any additional information. If you have something, that will go out on the next Tuesday. But if you have anything, you have up until Monday to get it to me, and I'll be happy to put it in the next newsletter. Other than that, any questions? All right, then I'll run back into the booth.
Thank you, Sean. Denise, with the training committee, moving to you.
Okay, our training committee met January 17th via conference call. For the most part, we worked on the training standards that were provided to us. We did some language. We did send them on to the standards committee. They worked on them a little bit more, tweaked a few things, and then ultimately went to the governance committee. One of them will get kicked back to us. I was also on that call, so I know what the discussion was. At the training level, we had some discussion on how we're actually going to get the training to the individuals, who's going to be responsible for doing that. Are we going to have a cadre of trainers do it? Is it going to be offered online? Suggestions were made to bring discussion to the board regarding potentially coming up with a solution to do online training and documentation for people who have to take this training if we make it mandatory for the Isicsb system. How are we going to do that? What that's going to look like? Potentially looking at getting a company who can assist. They threw out some ideas of some companies who do that. I know that at the state level they work with a company already, actually a couple of companies. So we're looking to get some quotes just so that we could present that information to the board. Board can take a look at that and give some opinion on that. There were 2 classes that were held. There was a Gateway Train the Trainer class that was done in January. Went through the 22nd through the 25th. Actually, on the 25th, that didn't occur. There wasn't enough attendance. So it was really the 22nd through the 24th. To my knowledge, it went well. The other class is currently going on. It's taking place this week, and it's actually a state-sponsored CompT class. And I believe that's going well. Right now it's at Camp Dodge. The other thing that we are looking at is we have a couple of TA requests that are out, and I know that Jim Lundstedt will probably talk a little bit more about it. But he had asked us to kind of tweak maybe one of our requests for the ComL Train the Trainer, and as opposed to just keeping it within Iowa, to make it more of a regional training. I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure if the board has any objections to that. Maybe there's some discussion that you might want to have regarding that issue. I think that it would be good if we could get our own ComL do a Train the Trainer class, but if we offered it regionally, the OEC may be able to go ahead and approve that a lot quicker than they would, because I know they're really looking at what trainings they're going to approve and not approve. So outside of that, our next meeting We actually voted to change our meetings from right now they're every third Wednesday. And because there's another meeting, it's on a third Wednesday, it's at the same time. Several of our members have a struggle which meeting they really would like to attend or can attend, so they do every other meeting. Gets a little bit confusing, they want to be able to attend both. So we asked the group if they wouldn't mind moving to the fourth Wednesday of the month. So now it's going to be the fourth Wednesday of every month. So I did pass that information along so that it can get changed on the calendar, and hopefully all will be okay with that. It doesn't conflict with anything else currently on the calendar, so I think we're okay. That's my report.
Okay. Any questions for Denise? All right, moving on. Patrick, Technology Committee.
Thank you. The technology report is going to include information from our late December meeting and January and into February. So you're getting two for the price of one here. Got about 5 different things going on. The first is our programming guide. Everybody should be familiar with that by now. A little history going back to December. We had some discussions about this programming guide and how to deal with it. We had conversations with the Attorney General's office, and we were trying to figure out how we're going to get this thing out there so that we can populate it with the necessary technical information for programming subscriber units to operate on the Isicsb system. So through all of this process, and we've been working on this since at least the programming guide since April of 2017. Some of the calls that I had with John Benson, what we discovered was there was an amendment made to Iowa Code 22.7 in the year 2017 with the information that showed up in that amended 22.7. We discovered that basically by default, this document, if approved, would become a confidential document just because it's got information related to critical infrastructure. And so, based on that, the next move was to call Andy Buffington and get his take on what the memorandum of agreement for users was when they sign up to operate on the Isicsb system. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, but within Section 10 of that agreement, there's wording that addresses the confidentiality aspect of it and other rules, I guess, for keeping information private, if you will. So based on all of those things, as far as the programming guide goes, we opted to put down the pen for all of that other stuff and start drafting a technical recommendation for that programming guide, which will show up in agenda item 20, new business. So that was one of the first things we did. The next thing that we've been working on is the subscriber unit testing procedure. We've taken the specifications that were given to us by Motorola as far as the system capabilities. And in all of the discussions, we started formulating some of the things within that document that are of most importance, and just kind of highlighted the things that we thought would be important for testing subscriber units, just as a starting point. And Chris Myers went out and gathered some information from other states as far as what they're doing to test subscriber units. we've taken that information just to go over it and see how something like that would work for the Isicsb system. Some of the things that we've discovered with those other systems is that they operate in a FDMA format instead of a TDMA format. The next part of that process was to find out if there was an acceptance test plan out there that we could use that could be made public, and take that information, scrub it for what we thought would be important for subscriber units to operate on that system. And so currently we're in the middle of working on that. Hopefully we can get something out sooner than later, but the overall intent to get some test procedure out there is currently underway. Next item is the 700 meg air to ground channel. We've run into some issues there. One of the things that we were trying to figure out is, can we license these? Do we have to license them? Or can we operate under a blanket authorization? Through that research, we found out you do have to license those 700 meg air to ground channels. And so what I did was I formulated a plan where the various frequencies are laid out by region across the state. We had started working on coming up with a channel plan, if you will, where it's laid out by region. You also have a statewide air-to-ground channel for patching and then a landing zone channel. Started drafting wording for that, and then the issue of licensing came up again, and so I'm currently working with Kelly to try to figure out some of the financials on that, because you can get them licensed through different coordinators, and those prices are different. Similar, but different. So we'll be returning to that discussion in the future with the hopes that we can get those licensed to the state of Iowa. The thing is anybody in the state of Iowa can license those channels. So even if we don't, and some agency out there who wants to license it, they can do that. So hopefully we'll have more in the future on that. An update on the 700, 800 scene of action channels. Obviously, we've got those channels, or at least the 700 meg channels licensed. But I had to go back and get information on why the 800 meg analog channels hadn't been licensed yet. And the plan was to get those 800 meg channels in the 853 megahertz range. The license kind of went through, but then it hit a snag, and we're currently dealing with that as we speak. The problem is those frequencies were rejected by the FCC. The license was amended, and so instead of getting the 853 megahertz channels, we got the offset frequencies at 808. Problem is that most of those mobile radios won't receive those frequencies in the programming portion of the radio. So we have to, I've got 60 days from January 25th to either write a waiver to the FCC or try to come up with a plan to build an 853 megahertz repeater. I'm guessing it's probably going to end up being the waiver or look for some other frequency selection to use. So there'll be more on that. The next thing was the issue of multi-key and single-key radios. We had worked with Chris Myers. We had quite a bit of discussion on this, and Chris did come up with some documentation to submit as a technical recommendation for what we thought would be best for the Isicsb system when it comes to single key or multi-key radios for encryption within the system. That recommendation, I see that didn't show up in the lineup here. I don't know if we'll be able to do much with that on today's meeting, but we do have the documentation that spells out why we came to the conclusion that we came to as far as using multi-key radios within the system. And I don't know, maybe Chris wants to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit on that, Patrick. So that comes out of the encryption subcommittee meetings that we had. And one of the most recent ones we did have, we had members representing all manufacturers from TIA and TR8, and in specifics, the encryption subcommittee. This includes the TIA chair, and we had some partners from FPIC, and also representatives from the federal side as well, with the FBI being present on the phone to kind of explain what their limitations are as far as how they can communicate with people via LMR on the sensitive but yet unclassified types of communications. And when you look at kind of the broad landscape of things, more or less the committee realized that we can't dictate what people want to buy, but we can put a recommendation out there that says if you want to interoperate with a whole bunch of different agencies, multi-key radios are probably the best way to accomplish that. And that would still allow you a pathway to encrypt your own stuff any way you want, so your operations can be segregated somewhat from everything else that's going on in the world of interoperability. So that's kind of how we arrived at that conclusion. The technical recommendation is about 1.5 pages or 2 pages long, if I remember right. And it outlines all the steps and all the meetings that we had prior to that to try to figure that out. And realistically, it also goes into addressing some of the issues that I mentioned previously with the standards and how single key and multi-key radios can communicate. It's probably a little bit too technically in depth for a meeting like this, but it works to kind of work around all those issues that are still persistent within the world of encrypted LMR. And I think it puts us strategically in a good position to try to make sure that we give the end users enough flexibility to ultimately decide what they want to buy, but it also makes them aware of what the technical limitations of a specific device may be.
Thanks. I guess that's it for today.
Patrick, do you have any problem, shortage of help on the technology committee? Because it sounds like you have quite a bit going on.
We always have a shortage of help. We can take whoever wants to participate.
Well, I see Rob Dennert in the back is actually pretty excited about helping out any way he can. So anyway, I applaud your efforts, Patrick, because I do know that and I do receive the emails and stuff you give to me. The one that you sent me here on the on licensing of those air-to-ground channels and stuff actually went to my junk mailbox. So, but I did get it, and thanks to Eric Nevins and stuff for participating in that as well. So, but any questions for Patrick? All right, well explained, I guess. Thank you. Other reports, information sharing amongst board members. Done here.
Jason, Mr. Chair, this is Tom. I'd like to share some things.
Go ahead, Tom.
I've got a lot of questions from counties and emergency managers in the state on what specifically DPS and the ISPs in their area are going to use for their operational channels. I'm talking operational, not interoperability, and how we're going to use the system. I was requested to put out, if I could, an email to statewide to the entities just to give an idea and an update of progress on what we're using it for and how we're using it. They work close with their troopers and their agents in their counties, and they want to be able to hear their operational traffic for obvious reasons, traffic stops, et cetera, because 99% of the time, the initial call will go direct on an operational channel. So if anybody's in the immediate area, they'd like to keep that. You can call it interoperability amongst operational stuff, but they just want to be able to hear like they need to stay. In addition, some counties are going dark, and what I mean by that is they're encrypting their entire system. So that represents issues that we can overcome, but there are some counties that will not be able to overcome that unless they actually get a physical radio with the encrypted key and talk group. We can handle it with our multiband radios, but we just have to get the permission to get their encrypted keys and the operational talk groups into our radios, so then we too can hear operational calls in case our people are close for assistance on a day-to-day basis. And that would avoid having to carry two radios, which they've been doing for many years. So that's the update as far as what DPS. We have policies to make. We have established some channels, law channels, to replace the DPS base. We had talk groups assigned for agents. We will allow people to hear those. We'll share just as much as we can to make all those relationships stay intact with their locals so they can hear our traffic. And that's what I have. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to ask or answer.
I guess is that something that Tom, is that something that when and that's talking about their operational frequency and the channels that they're using for operations, and then sharing those frequencies with surrounding agencies that may not be on their system. I guess I see the point of it, but I also want to know. I'd also want to know how much assistance are you getting from, if they're on different systems, how much are you getting from those vendors, from those systems to do that? I don't think that would be a problem. I mean, you're talking about safety of personnel.
It's totally up to the county to allow the talker to be used, and then the encryption key to be also delivered, and they have to go to their vendor to get that key so we can program that into our system. So they work through their vendor in order to get, unless they have their own software. Some have their own software, some don't.
So you're saying it might be easier said than done?
Oh, I think it's pretty easy. It's the relationship you have with your county if they're going to allow you to listen and give the encryption keys to you. We have great relationships with counties because they've actually given us a physical radio. Like in eastern Iowa around the Dubuque area, troopers have had radios in their cars for years, so it's just so they can hear. Because they're on trunking and we're on VHF. Well, now, not only are some counties on trunking, they're also encrypting everything. So there's two steps involved. You have to now get their talk group and their encryption keys. And if they update their encryption keys, then you have to go back and get another updated encryption key. So it's a tedious process, but it can be done. It's just the cooperation amongst the entities.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? All right. Any other board members on the phone that have information to share? All right, hearing none. Jim Lundstedt, would you stand at the podium, sir?
Good morning. We'll bring just two or three, well, actually four things very quickly to your attention. First, thank you, Denise, for the excellent recap of what's underway on OEC Technical Assistance, the in-progress course, and the recently completed Audio Gateway. Initial feedback I've heard on the Audio Gateway was positive, and we've actually already received inquiries from 2 other states as to how you did that and what the outcome was. So I think that is a positive. To specify a little bit more detail, Denise brought up the question about the communications unit leader train the trainer. Our current requirement is that if it is delivered as a state course, we need 8 qualified students to begin work to schedule the class. We've recently had to cancel classes when we were unable to secure 8 qualified students in a single state. As a result, if we reclassify the course as a regional COML, it can still be conducted in Iowa. But if we do not reach the minimum head count to conduct the class, OEC may elect to send in a couple of students from another state, pay their travel costs to participate, and then reach that minimum threshold. There is no intent to take the class away from Iowa, but it would allow you to meet your minimum threshold to conduct the class. Two things of interest on the wider scale interoperability story. The National Governors Association, which has been involved in helping develop best practices for governance and a number of other practices for governors for well over 10 years in the emergency communications arena, is holding a series of workshops at 4 locations in the United States this year. This includes a recently concluded class in New Orleans, where 8 states, including your peer states of Missouri and Kansas, participated. The next workshop will be in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 20 and 21 March. I understand Iowa has asked to attend that class, and I'm working with the governor's office in Nebraska to solicit their participation as well. Iowa has indicated a willingness to not only send 3 attendees, but also ask Blake to attend to discuss 911. We had 2 attendees that were specific to the 911 discipline in New Orleans. It was a very valuable input, and as we recognize, the emergency communications ecosystem is really all about all of emergency communications. We want that voice to be heard. The statewide interoperability coordinators in this region will meet together in Kansas City on 22 February, not only to discuss technical assistance, but to normalize some of what we're hearing from, about, and externally about FirstNet, as well as coordinate planning on activities such as encryption. The discussion Chris just offered you, Swick-Myers, about encryption is active in every state. Monday, we held a regional workshop and discussion in Northwest Missouri to talk about the evolution of encryption. We have a lot of legacy embedded non-interoperable encryption deployed in Missouri right now. I'm working with the state of Kansas. They're just now starting to deploy ADP, which is a vendor-specific solution to try to deal with some short-term problems. In the long view, the multi-key interoperable standard based on AES encryption is probably the best bet, but for many of us, that represents the next investment in mobile radio. You're in a unique situation where many of your agencies are now considering getting into trunking radios with the Isicsb or other platforms. So as long as you stay with the higher order AES encryption and a multi-key environment, my opinion, you're in a much better place. Last thing I'll bring up, we talked briefly in the 911 committee council meeting this morning about a telephone denial of service attack. Happened a couple of weekends ago here in West Des Moines. Caution, that has not completely gone away. The incident that was described is a classic denial of service attack, originates from a foreign country, terminating calls on the business lines of the PSAP, not interrupting 911, but stealing resources from the dispatch time to deal with these repeated inbound calls on the business lines. I'm going to distribute information on our telephone denial of service best practice back to Blake for distribution. We encourage people to be vigilant and share, because these things tend to be cyclical. We've had a number of calls that involved swatting in an adjacent state recently. Swatting, if you're not familiar, is using spoofed numbers and calls to divert resources. We had an unfortunate incident in an adjacent state where a police officer was involved in a shooting. But the classic stuff that's happening, I tell people in cybersecurity, we make up a new vocabulary every week. If you want to have some fun, go read up about jackpotting, the latest attack on ATMs. And I'll probably have a new word for you next month. With that, I stand for any questions or comments. Thank you, sir.
Terry McClanahan, Standards Working Group.
Could I ask, this is Tom. Could I ask Jim one quick question?
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Jim, with in regards to the attack a couple of weeks ago, what prevents that from happening to the 911 system?
The fact that a caller cannot terminate an international call to anything but a 10-digit telephone number. 911 uses a different routing methodology, and to date, we have not seen any attacks that were successful getting into a private closed network like that. These are typically pointed at call centers in a commercial or governmental entity and occasionally touch the public safety answering point. But these generally involve voice over IP terminated over an international long-distance carrier to a local exchange, and you have to have a 10-digit number to complete that call. Does that answer that, Tom?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
We are the NCCIC, which is our Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, has resident personnel from all of the long-distance carriers, many of the local exchange carriers, and we have not only the partner federal agencies, but all of the industry associations such as NENA, APCO, and others that advise us, and there's a very high level of vigilance on this topic, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Terry.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The standards work group, which is made up of Ann Roth and Ethan here, would help us out with writing the standards, and they go back to the committees, and then the committees meet in our workshop that we usually hold. We're trying to do one about once a month. We did it on February 1st. We were able to get through 8 different standards, which you'll see today that and discuss those. But our next meeting will be in March, probably the latter part of March after spring break. But we're working on getting through the list. We had 73, if you remember, 73 standards that was written. And we have identified 32 of those as high priority. So and I think we're now at number 12. So we're going to try and knock out as many as we can each time we have a workshop. So,
okay.
Any questions?
Thanks for your work.
Yeah, thanks.
Money coming your way, John. All right. Moving to old business, I don't see anything listed there, so I'll move to new business. UGC Chair Buffington, would you like to have the floor again, please?
Yes, the user group committee reviewed applications from Delaware Township Fire, Chickasaw County Emergency Management, Grundy County Sheriff's Department, and the United States Army Corps Red Rock Project, and recommend acceptance into Isicsb of all 4 of the applicants.
Okay. I'm taking that's your motion, correct?
That is my motion, correct.
All right. Thank you, Andy. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion on the approval of these 4 applications? Okay, hearing no discussion. Ethan, go ahead with the roll call vote, please.
Jeff Swearingen.
Aye.
Patrick Updike.
Aye.
Jeff Sunholm.
Aye.
Marty Smith. Tom Lampy.
Aye.
John Benson.
Aye.
Bob Van Wolfrat.
Aye.
Denise Pavlik.
Aye.
Andy Buffington.
Aye.
Ellen Hagan. Deb Cribble. Dave Ness.
Aye.
Jason Leonard.
Aye.
Rob Rotter.
Aye.
Mike Casper.
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith.
Aye.
Larry Smith.
Aye.
Linda Fredrickson. Kelly Grosskirth.
Aye.
All in favor.
All right. Thank you. Motion passes. Moving to Chair Benson with the Isicsb standards approval. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. And I should actually recognize Terry for the hard work they're doing bringing these forward. As much as I hate to deal with the volume that you're going to throw at me, thank you for doing it. And I will say, and you can tell I'm kind of an indentured civil servant now. I appreciate the effort being made, and not only the fact that they're coming to us very clean. The edits we're making are really just my own personal preference on how things should be written, really what it gets down to. So Terry, your folks are doing a great job. I appreciate it. What you have in front of you are 10 of the standards that were brought forth to us. As I mentioned earlier, we did have 11. We did kick one back that we will be reconsidering. But you have 10 in front of you. The first 3 were actually accomplished and approved by the governance committee during their January conference call. The last 7 were approved by the governance committee during their February call. And as I said, for the most part, other than minor language changes, all of them were essentially accepted as presented. Having said that, I would make a motion to have the board approve all 10 of the standards as presented from the governance committee.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff, for the second. Any discussion on any one of the 10 or any questions on it that John can answer or maybe Terry can answer? No discussion on them? Any? Hearing no discussion, Ethan, can I have a roll call vote?
Jeff Swearingen,
Aye.
Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Jeff Sunholm,
Aye.
Marty Smith, Tom Lampy,
Aye.
John Benson,
Aye.
Bob Van Wolfrat,
Aye.
Denise Pavlik,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Ellen Hagan, Deb Crable, Dave Ness,
Aye.
Jason Leonard,
Aye.
Rob Rotter,
Aye.
Mike Casper,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith,
Aye.
Larry Smith,
Aye.
Linda Frederickson, Kelly Grosskirth.
Aye.
All in favor.
Okay, motion passes 15-0. John,
Yep.
I'm going to move it back to you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
If I may, just so everybody's aware that as the governance committee moves those out and passes them, you will see those show up on the website almost, I think, either the day or right after. Ethan and Sean do a real good job of getting those out there. So if you go to the documents portion of the website, hang on here. Yeah, if you look under the resources and the documents page, as soon as those are approved, you will see, the governance approves those, you will see those out on the website for your review. So I would, as governance, we use first Monday, I don't know, when the hell do we meet? First Monday of the month? Look like on the Tuesday after that first Monday, and you'll find anything that we've approved out there. Just kind of keeps things flowing so you guys understand how things work.
Thank you. Patrick, on with the programming guide policy technical recommendation.
Okay, so I just have a few questions here before I get into this. Did everybody get the documentation, the technology printed version of this recommendation? And if so, did you have a chance to read it? The next question is if you did not, do you want me to read it? I mean, we already went through the history of this issue, but if you want me to read this, I can.
I guess I'll defer to the other board members here. I mean, I know that I've read it. I know it's been out there. It's for everybody to see. We've been talking about it for a few months. Is there anybody that is going to require Patrick to read this? Okay, I don't think so. Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, so the programming guide, as you know, has had a lot of work put towards it, and the end result is the Isicsb Technology Committee would like to make a technical recommendation for the board to adopt this as an official document, which is covered under Iowa Code 22.7, subsection 50. The document would allow the people who are working within the technical realm of to have this populated with the program subscribers. So And I believe, I've talked to Rob Dennard about this. I believe that this document can be populated rather quickly with the necessary information so that it can be put out there to those that have a need to know. So that's my technical recommendation. I'd like to see the board adopt this.
Okay. Is that your motion then, Patrick, to have the board approve this?
I would make a motion that the Isicsb board approve the programming guide as an official technical documentation covered under Iowa Code 22.7 subsection 50.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on what we've been talking about? And I see John has a.
If I may, very quickly, so everyone understands, 22.7, 50, paragraph 50. What it talks about in there is keeping certain information away from public view with regard specifically to cybersecurity, physical infrastructure, critical infrastructure, security procedures, emergency preparedness, things of that nature. So what he's proposing here actually fits under the concept of security codes and combinations, passwords, restricted area passes, things of that nature. Unfortunately, I've had to spend a lot more time in this particular chunk of the code in these last few years than I would like to. But I do feel, at least in my opinion, that what he is asking for and what the document does do and what it encourages the board to do is completely appropriate.
Thank you, John. Any other discussion on it? All right, hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, Ethan?
Aye.
Aye.
Jeff Sunholm,
Aye.
Marty Smith, Tom Lampy,
Aye.
John Benson,
Aye.
Bob Van Wolfrat,
Aye.
Denise Pavlik,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Ellen Hagan, Deb Cribble, Dave Ness,
Aye.
Jason Leonard,
Aye.
Rob Rotter,
Aye.
Mike Casper,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith,
Aye.
Larry Smith,
Aye.
Linda Frederickson, Kelly Grosskirth.
Aye.
All in favor.
All right, thank you. Motion passes 15-0. Patrick, and along with Chris Myers or Swick, if moving on to the recommendation for multi-key subscriber units.
Chris, you want to take that for starters?
Patrick, do you want me to cover that, or are you going to cover that?
Go ahead. I'll let you take the floor first, and then I'll come.
Okay, so you'll have to be the one that makes the motion, but
Right.
more or less, just to kind of build on what I talked about before, the technical recommendation for the board, assuming you all have had a chance to see it, would more or less basically say that in terms of technical capabilities, allowing for the most flexibility for the end user, for their operability and interoperability, and overall security, multi-key AES 256 encryption is probably the best thing for users to have in their radios if they want to operate and interoperate in an encrypted environment. And most of this document deals specifically with, well, actually all of it deals specifically with interoperability. So some of those encrypted talk groups that were on the fleet map. What this recommendation also does is it acknowledges that this is not ready for prime time yet. So it will advise that the encrypted interoperable talk groups should be left in the programming code plugs. They will remain in the system, but they will be inactive until the encryption side is ready to go. And what that does is it keeps those slots in people's radios so that when it is ready to go, all they got to do is load the key in their devices, and then they're set. It outlines before, as I said, kind of the advantages and pros and cons of each one, but overall, based on everything we've been able to gather so far with the encryption subcommittee, it seems like this is the best path forward. So Patrick, I'll yield to you.
Yeah, when we went through all of this, I can tell you that the people within the technology committee were good with it. They were given different, versions of this to read and reread, and we did go over it and got the consensus from everybody that this was the way to go. So the Isicsb Technology Committee would like to make the technical recommendation that multi-key radios be the choice within the interoperable communication system, as outlined by Chris Myers.
Is that in your form of your motion there, Patrick? I'm gonna refer back to you again to make a formal motion here for me. All right?
Yeah, Yes, I'd like to make a motion from the technology committee that the board adopt the multi-key radios within the Isicsb system as outlined by Chris Myers in his report on that.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. That's going to be quite a bit of. I'm hoping, Ethan, you take good notes on this. So I have a motion. Do I have a second? John Benson, second. Do I have any more discussion on this issue?
Yeah, Jason, this is Chris. Just one more thing I want to clarify. It doesn't lock anybody into having to purchase a multi-key radio. It's merely a technical recommendation, suggestion of what would be probably perceived as best practices on a small county level scale all the way up to national scale. So,
Thank you for clarifying that. So any other discussion? Hearing none. Ethan, could you give me a roll call, please?
Jeff Swearingen.
Aye.
Patrick Updike.
Aye.
Jeff Sunholm.
Aye.
Marty Smith. Tom Lampy.
Aye.
John Benson.
Aye.
Bob Van Wolfrat.
Aye.
Denise Pavlik.
Aye.
Andy Buffington.
Aye.
Ellen Hagan. Deb Cribble. Dave Ness.
Aye.
Jason Leonard.
Aye.
Rob Rotter.
Aye.
Mike Casper.
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith.
Aye.
Larry Smith.
Aye.
Linda Frederickson. Kelly Grosskirth.
Aye.
All in favor.
All right, thank you. Motion passes 15-0. Depending on what, if you just jumped on the website this morning, I see that the agenda doesn't, the website version of the agenda does not have this next letter on there. However, the one that I printed off a couple days ago did. But either way, we're gonna move past that. The letter to the PSAPs. Chair Crable is not here to even talk about it, so I know that we all are probably aware of it because I know she's been talking about it for quite some time. So we're going to move past that anyway. So moving to public comment. I'm going to open the floor to anybody in the public that would like to speak. Rob, nothing that you want to retort back? Okay, I get it. Okay, no more public comment. Can I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, John. We're adjourned.
thank you.